All right, let's talk about the cursive grid. These are the guidelines, the slant lines that frame our writing. It's the grid that we write our script within. Okay, and this grid is something that you'll find in all kinds of calligraphic scripts. So I'm using terms here that are standard, and if you ever take any other courses about other types of handwriting or penmanship or calligraphy, you'll see these terms mentioned there as well. All right. So first, let's talk about the names of these horizontal lines going across the page. These are guidelines. These are what we use to control the height of our letters when we write them. Okay, and the position of our letters. All right. Now the first grid line we want to talk about is the baseline. Okay, that's this line right here. That's the line that all the letters basically sit on. Okay, and you get an idea of what I mean by sit on when I show you the whole alphabet at once. Here's the lowercase letters, and you can see, let me just center that up, all the letters basically sit on this baseline. Now you obviously can see that some of them go below the baseline. Those are called descending letters, and these are the descending loops that go below the baseline. But for the most part, everything goes on the baseline. And when you're writing something in cursive, you basically always start at that baseline. That's your bottom point that you're thinking about. And then once in a while, when you write a descending letter, you'll go below that baseline. All right, and when you do go below that baseline, you'll write down to what's called the descender line. All right, and I've marked that here. It's this bottom thick black line. And like I said, we have some of our descending letters like the F or the G or the J. These have descending loops that stretch all the way down to that descender line. And that descender line makes it a lot easier for you to have all of these loops be the same length or height. Okay, and it's really nice when they all match up like that. Now, if we go up the grid, we'll see our next line is the X height line. And that's just a standard term. I'm not going to get into why it's called that, but it is this line that really encapsulates the body of most of our lowercase letters. All right, if we look back at our lowercase alphabet, we can see the A fits completely within this X height line. The C does too. The E does too. The I. And then if you even look at letters that go outside of the X height, like for instance the B, we can see that really the body of this B fits within that X height line as well. It's just the ascending loop that goes above the X height line. Same with the G. You can see the body of this G is right here. It looks just a lot like our A, and we'll talk about that. But it's just that descending loop that goes outside of this X height space is what we might call it as well. All right. Now, a good thing to notice here, if I show you this X height again, is that the X height is also really the unit of our grid. Okay, we think about it in those terms. We can see that this X height space here is also the same as the space up here and the space up here. So we have 3 X height spaces on our grid. I can mark that like this, X, X, X. And then below I don't have the dotted line in between, but we actually have exactly 2 X height spaces below the baseline as well. So what you might notice is that above the X height, we have 2 X height spaces. And then below the baseline, we have 2 X height spaces. So this X height space between the baseline and the X height line is really the center point of our grid. And then we have equal spacing above and below. All right. Now, we talked about ascending loops with the B, and we have our ascending loop letters, which are the B, the F, the H, the K, L. And all of these letters have loops that go above the X height, and they go all the way up to our ascending line, our ascender line, which is also called the top line, okay? So all those letters are going up to the same height. Now there are other letters. You might have noticed we have this TD line as well. And the TD line is there because we have certain letters that don't go all the way up. They go above the X height, but they don't go all the way up to the ascender line. And those letters are T and D. So here's the D. You can see the stem goes up above the X height to our TD line. And we have our T over here, which also extends up above the X height to the TD line. And we also have our P, which is a very somewhat traditional P in that it extends all the way up to this TD line, which gives it a really nice look on that P. All right, so those are the only 3 letters that go up to that TD line, but that's why that TD line is there. It also helps us frame in some other elements of our script, like let's say the dot on the I and the J. Those go halfway between the X height and the TD line. I'll talk about that when we cover those letters. And the cross on the T goes halfway between the TD line and the X height. All right, so that's the scaffolding, that's the cursive grid as far as the guidelines go. All right, let's talk about the slant lines. So that's the next part of this this worksheet that I have for you. And we can see we have 2 slant lines on this worksheet. We have our main slant, which is at 60 degrees. And then we have our connective slant, which is at 30 degrees. All right, and the main slant is by far the most important slant line in the script, because every single letter in our script, in our cursive script, and I'll just look at the lowercase right now, but it goes for the capitals too. All of these letters are oriented along the main slant, okay? And I'll just show you, I'll start with the first few letters in the alphabet. The A, as you can see, there's a downstroke right here in the A, and that is on our main slant. This B, this whole letter, this loop and the body of this B, that is all oriented on the main slant. This C, the back of this C is oriented on the main slant. The D, the back stem of this D is on the main slant. I keep going, the loop of this E is on the main slant. I can go through every single letter, and I hope you can see when you look at the script as a whole that all of these letters share a slant. You can all see they're leaning to the right at the same angle, okay? And that's the first thing that everybody notices about handwriting, is especially if it has consistent slant. It doesn't matter if your forms are terrible or your sizing or your shape of the letters is bad. If you have consistent slant, main slant on all your letters, people are going to think you have good handwriting. And it's because that main slant is the most cohesive thing about all these letters. You know, these letters are different sizes. These letters all have different unique forms and shapes. But one thing they all share is that main slant, okay? All right, the other slant line that we need to understand is the connective slant. And I've added that one to our diagram here. And you can see that it is a shallower slant. It is on a 30-degree angle. And I've depicted here on the letter I both of the slants, the main slant and the connective slant. Just quickly, the main slant you can see is coming straight down through this letter I on this downstroke of the I. Okay, so in this I we come up, we come down on the main slant right here, and then we come out. All right, and it's these entry and exit strokes that are on the connective slant. Okay, and we can see if we look closely here that this entry stroke in the I, any stroke that comes into a letter we call an entry stroke. This entry stroke is curving underneath the connective slant. All right, the connective slant, I can draw the connective slant line right at the start of that entry stroke and go to where it ends right here at the top of the letter. All right, then we come down on the main slant, and then we have an exit stroke, which is any stroke that exits a letter or finishes a letter. And we can see that that exit stroke is also on that connective slant as well. All right. And we have to the right here, I've diagrammed the 2 types of turn. These are really fundamental strokes in the script, but they're the 2 types of turns that happen on this connective slant. Okay, so we have our underturn, which we call underturn because it's curving underneath the connective slant. So we have the connective slant here, and it's curving underneath it. It's starting on the connective slant, curving under, and then right at the X height, right here, it's going back right to that connective slant line. And then our overturn is doing the same thing, but it's going over the connective slant, okay? So it starts at the baseline, just curves over the connective slant, and then at the X height, it lands on the connective slant again, okay? So we say that that stroke is on the connective slant, but with an overturn. All right, and we see these types of turns in our script. Like with the I, we see 2 underturns. With an A, for example, we see an overturn and an underturn. So with the A, we can have the overturn coming into the letter like this. And then we make the body of the A, and we come down on our main slant, and then we exit with an underturn. Okay? So here we have our overturn on our connective slant like that. And then our exiting stroke is an underturn because it goes under the connective slant as well. So these are the terms that you'll need to understand as we go through the course. I'm going to be saying things like entry stroke, exit stroke, underturn, overturn, main slant, connective slant. So make sure you understand these concepts before we get into studying the letter forms.